What if everything you've been taught about prosperity has been backwards? What if the very reason you're struggling financially isn't because you lack opportunity, education, or even luck, but because you're approaching abundance from a place of spiritual emptiness? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Today, I want to share with you a profound truth that has transformed countless lives, including my own. It comes from teachings based on Emmet Fox's revolutionary understanding of prosperity consciousness, and it challenges everything our material world tells us about wealth and success. Has this ever happened to you? You work harder, you chase more opportunities, you even manifest and visualize, yet somehow that deep sense of financial security and inner peace continues to elude you? Here's what most people don't realize. True prosperity isn't about accumulating more things or even generating more income. It's about discovering who you are in God and allowing that divine identity to express itself through every aspect of your life. You see, you didn't stumble upon this video by accident. Your soul has begun to remember something that your mind has forgotten, that genuine abundance flows from consciousness, not from circumstances. The narrow door of prosperity that we're going to explore today isn't narrow because God wants to limit you. It's narrow because most of us have filled ourselves with so many borrowed desires, fears, and misconceptions about money that we can no longer fit through the gateway to true wealth. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. It's not about learning new techniques or strategies, but about unlearning the spiritual blocks that have been sabotaging your financial flow. This transformation begins with a single question that will shift everything. Who will you become when you stop asking life from a place of lack and start cooperating with it from a place of certainty? The person you're meant to be isn't a more successful version of who you are now. It's your essential self, stripped of fear, aligned with divine principle, someone who embodies rather than demonstrates, who circulates rather than accumulates. When you understand this shift in consciousness, something remarkable happens. You stop needing to prove your worth through possessions. You stop feeling anxious about the future because you know each day contains its own provision. You begin to move through life with an interior elegance that attracts opportunities, relationships, and resources in ways that feel almost effortless. The most successful people I know have discovered this secret. They've learned to cultivate what I call abundance consciousness, a state of being that recognizes God as the true source of all supply. And here's what's fascinating about this approach. It works regardless of your current financial situation, your background, or your past failures. But how exactly do you make this shift from scarcity thinking to prosperity consciousness? How do you move from being someone who asks from lack to someone who cooperates from certainty? And what are the specific daily practices that can rewire your relationship with money and abundance? If these insights are speaking to your soul and you want to continue this journey of conscious prosperity together, I invite you to subscribe. This isn't just about getting notifications. You're joining a community of people who understand that true wealth comes from within and are committed to building abundance that aligns with their highest values. The transformation that happens when you step through this narrow door of prosperity consciousness is unlike anything you've experienced before. It's not about becoming a better version of who you think you are. It's about discovering who you've always been, beneath all the noise, fear, and conditioning that society has layered upon you. Most people spend their entire lives trying to improve themselves, accumulate more credentials, build bigger networks, or develop better strategies. But here's the hidden truth that changed everything for me. Your essential self already knows how to prosper. It's been there all along, waiting patiently for you to strip away everything that isn't really you. Think about this. For a moment, When you watch someone who truly embodies prosperity consciousness, what strikes you isn't what they're trying to prove or demonstrate. It's their presence. There's a quality of being that emanates from them, a sense of inner authority that doesn't need validation. They've learned to circulate energy and resources rather than hoard them, and this circulation creates a magnetic field that naturally attracts abundance. This journey toward your essential self requires a fundamental shift in how you navigate change and uncertainty. We live in a world where most people are reactive, letting external circumstances dictate their internal state. They panic when the market fluctuates, despair when opportunities disappear, and celebrate when things go well, creating an exhausting emotional roller coaster that drains their creative power. But when you align with your essential self, something remarkable happens. You develop the ability to maintain profound calm in the midst of chaos. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine. It's about cultivating an unshakable connection to your divine source that remains steady regardless of external appearances. Imagine being able to think clearly even when circumstances seem to be moving against you. Picture yourself choosing your thoughts with the same precision an artist selects colors for a masterpiece, deliberately crafting your mental landscape rather than allowing random thoughts to create your reality. This level of mental mastery isn't reserved for spiritual gurus or business titans. It's your birthright as a spiritual being, having a human experience. The impact of this transformation extends far beyond your bank account. When you operate from this space of inner certainty, your decisions become aligned with divine timing. You stop forcing outcomes and start allowing solutions to emerge naturally. You begin to recognize opportunities that were always there, but invisible to your fear-based thinking. Your relationships improve because you're no longer coming from a place of need, but from a place of wholeness. What's fascinating is how this inner work translates into practical results. People often ask me about specific strategies or techniques, but the real breakthrough happens when you understand that your consciousness is the strategy. When your mind is clear and your heart is aligned, the right actions become obvious. The right people appear. The right resources flow toward you with an ease that feels almost supernatural. Behind the scenes of every sustained success story, you'll find this principle at work. Those who maintain prosperity through economic downturns, personal challenges, and industry disruptions have learned to anchor themselves in something deeper than external conditions. They've discovered that their true security comes from their connection to divine source, not from their portfolio or position. This is where most traditional approaches to wealth building miss the mark entirely. They focus on external mechanics while ignoring the internal foundation that makes sustainable prosperity possible. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and show you exactly how this principle applies to the way you think about money, resources, and your daily relationship with abundance. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to discover my essential self," if this resonates with you. The most powerful shift happens when you learn to act from your center rather than being pulled around by every impulse, emotion, or external pressure. Most people live their lives in reactive mode, constantly responding to whatever crisis or opportunity presents itself, like leaves blown around by every gust of wind. But when you're connected to your essential self, you develop an internal compass that guides your decisions from a place of deep knowing rather than surface-level reactions. This centered way of being transforms your entire relationship with time itself. Instead of anxiously projecting into an uncertain future or carrying regret from past decisions, you begin to trust that each day contains exactly what you need. This isn't naive optimism. It's a profound understanding of how divine provision works. When you're aligned with your source, resources, opportunities, and solutions appear precisely when they're needed, often in ways you never could have planned or anticipated. What's remarkable about this mindset transformation is how it reframes every experience you've ever had. Those failures that used to haunt you, they become essential steps in your consciousness development. The rejections that once felt devastating, they were redirections protecting you from paths that weren't aligned with your highest good. The financial struggles that seemed to prove your inadequacy, they were actually perfecting your ability to trust in invisible resources and develop spiritual resilience. This journey I'm describing isn't about promising you immediate material wealth or overnight success. That kind of thinking actually keeps you trapped in the same consciousness that created your current limitations. Instead, what we're talking about is a radical transformation of how your mind operates at the deepest level. It's an invitation to discover something that most people spend their entire lives searching for externally while it exists within them all along. The hidden truth is that the greatest luxury isn't a mansion or expensive car. It's the peace that comes from knowing you're aligned with your purpose. The true treasure isn't a massive bank account. It's the mental order that allows you to navigate any situation with clarity and confidence. The highest form of elegance isn't designer clothes or exclusive accessories. It's the grace that emanates from a soul that has remembered its divine source. This revelation completely changes your decision-making process. When peace becomes your primary goal rather than profit, you make choices that create sustainable abundance rather than temporary gains. When mental clarity becomes more valuable than material accumulation, you invest your energy in thoughts and activities that compound over time rather than drain your resources. When you recognize your divine nature, you stop settling for anything less than what truly honors your essential self. Behind the scenes of this transformation, something beautiful happens to your nervous system. Instead of living in constant fight-or-flight mode, worried about survival and scarcity, you begin to operate from a state of calm alertness. Your creativity flourishes because fear isn't blocking your access to inspiration. Your intuition sharpens because you're not drowning out its subtle voice with mental noise and emotional turbulence. The impact extends into every area of your life in ways that might surprise you. Your health improves because stress isn't constantly flooding your system with cortisol. Your relationships deepen because you're no longer needy or desperate for validation. Your work becomes more effective because you're operating from vision rather than desperation. But here's where most people get stuck in this journey toward prosperity consciousness. They understand these concepts intellectually, but they haven't learned how to practically apply them to their daily relationship with money, work, and material resources. The bridge between spiritual understanding and practical application requires specific practices that train your consciousness to operate from abundance rather than scarcity. This is where the rubber meets the road, where theory becomes transformation, and where your understanding begins to reshape your actual experience. Put down peace is luxury if you're beginning to see money and success from this new perspective. The profound revelation that changes everything is understanding that you're not here to improve your economy. You are spiritual. Economy in action. This shift in perspective is like suddenly realizing you've been trying to fill a glass that's already connected to an infinite well. You've been approaching abundance as if you were separate from it, when in reality, you are the very mechanism through which divine prosperity expresses itself in the physical world. Most people see themselves as recipients, constantly trying to get something from the universe, begging for opportunities, pleading for abundance, hoping for their big break. But when you awaken to your true nature, you recognize yourself as a channel through which infinite resources flow. You're not a container trying to fill itself. You're a river through which the ocean expresses its abundance. This understanding completely transforms your relationship with money, success, and material resources. Think about the implications of this revelation. When you know your expression, rather than accumulation, you stop hoarding and start circulating. When you understand you're the garden, the seed, and the fruit simultaneously, you realize that everything you need to create prosperity already exists within your consciousness. You're not waiting for external conditions to improve. You're the very force that improves conditions through your aligned awareness and purposeful action. This is where the principle of interior elegance becomes absolutely crucial to understand. Every person who has achieved sustained prosperity, not just temporary wealth, but deep, lasting abundance, has discovered that true prosperity is fundamentally spiritual in nature. It doesn't begin with strategies, tactics, or market conditions. It begins and ends in the state of consciousness from which you operate every single day. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough, every business success, every moment of abundance, there's a consciousness that has been cultivated and refined. The external manifestation is simply the shadow cast by the inner reality. This is why some people can lose everything and rebuild it quickly, while others struggle their entire lives despite having every apparent advantage. The difference isn't in their circumstances. It's in their consciousness. Here's the hidden truth that most wealth-building approaches completely miss. What is not cultivated within the soul can never be sustained outside of it. You might temporarily accumulate money through sheer effort or lucky breaks, but if your consciousness hasn't been prepared to receive and steward that abundance, it will slip away. You've probably seen this pattern in lottery winners who lose everything within a few years, or inherited wealth that dissipates in a single generation. If something in this message resonated deeply with you, if you felt that shift in consciousness that comes when truth connects with your soul, a simple, like, lets me know we're on the same wavelength. It's your way of saying, yes, this is the content that serves my highest. A growth, and it helps these teachings reach others who need them too. The transformation that happens when you understand this principle is remarkable. Instead of chasing external results, you begin cultivating internal states. Instead of trying to manipulate circumstances, you focus on aligning your consciousness with abundance. Instead of feeling desperate about your current situation, you recognize that every moment is an opportunity to express your divine nature more fully. This interior work isn't abstract or mystical. It has immediate practical applications. When your consciousness is ordered, your decisions become clearer. When your soul is cultivated, your intuition sharpens. When your inner world reflects abundance, your outer world begins to mirror that same quality. The elegance isn't in your possessions. It's in your presence, your choices, your way of being in the world. What's fascinating is how this approach dissolves the struggle that characterizes most people's relationship with money and success. When you're operating from spiritual economy rather than material economy, there's an ease and flow that replaces the grinding effort and constant worry. Resources appear when needed, opportunities align with perfect timing, and obstacles transform into stepping stones. Now the question becomes, how do you practically cultivate this interior elegance and align your consciousness with spiritual abundance? How do you train your mind to operate as a clear channel rather than a blocked pipe? The answer lies in understanding the architecture of consciousness itself and learning to build your inner world with the same precision that an architect designs a cathedral. Right, I am the channel. If you're ready to embrace this new understanding of your role in creating abundance, the profound wisdom in Christ's teaching about not storing treasures on earth has been tragically misunderstood for centuries. Most people interpret this as a condemnation of money or material success, when in reality it's one of the most precise teachings ever given about the principle of mental priority. Jesus wasn't warning against prosperity. He was revealing the secret to sustainable abundance by showing us that consciousness creates form, never the reverse. This revelation completely transforms how you approach every financial decision, every career move, every investment of your time and energy. When you understand that your external world is a direct reflection of your internal state, You stop trying to fix problems at the surface level and start addressing them at the source. You realize that chasing money without first establishing prosperity consciousness is like trying to change your reflection without changing yourself. The hidden truth embedded in this teaching is that when the soul is genuinely rich, when your consciousness is filled with peace, gratitude, and divine connection, abundance manifests as naturally as fruit appears on a healthy tree. You're not forcing outcomes or manipulating circumstances. You're simply creating the internal conditions that allow prosperity to emerge organically through your life. This is where the concept of true elegance becomes absolutely transformational. We live in a culture obsessed with external symbols of success, designer labels, luxury cars, impressive homes, social media status. But authentic elegance has nothing to do with what you own or wear or drive. True elegance is a way of living truth with complete coherence and without the noise of ego, comparison, or insecurity. Watch someone who embodies this principle, and you'll notice something remarkable. There's a quality of presence that emanates from them, regardless of their circumstances. They could be dressed simply, driving an ordinary car, living in a modest home, yet there's an unmistakable sense of grace and authority that draws people toward them. This is the elegance that comes from knowing, at the deepest level, that God provides. This knowing isn't intellectual belief or positive thinking. It's a lived experience that permeates every aspect of your being. When you truly understand that divine source is unlimited and that you are connected to that source, a profound serenity settles into your consciousness. You stop rushing, grasping, and forcing. You begin to move through life with the confidence of someone who knows that everything needed will appear at exactly the right moment. Behind the scenes of this transformation, your mind undergoes a complete reordering. Instead of being trained in worry, scarcity, and competition, your mental faculties become trained to bless, to see abundance, to recognize opportunity where others see obstacle. This isn't about naive optimism or denying challenges. It's about developing the spiritual maturity to respond to every situation from a place of inner wealth rather than inner poverty. The impact of this mental reordering extends far beyond your bank account. Your relationships improve because you're no longer needy or desperate. Your health strengthens because stress and anxiety aren't constantly flooding your system. Your creativity flourishes because fear isn't blocking your access to inspiration. Your decision-making becomes clearer because you're operating from wisdom rather than desperation. What's fascinating is how this approach to elegance and prosperity creates a completely different relationship with material things. When you're not seeking external validation or trying to fill internal voids through accumulation, you naturally gravitate toward quality over quantity, substance over appearance, meaning over status. Your choices become aligned with your values rather than your insecurities. This is the journey from external seeking to internal knowing, from material accumulation to spiritual circulation, from artificial elegance to authentic presence. But understanding this principle intellectually is only the beginning. The real transformation happens when you learn to practically apply these insights to the way you think, speak, and act in your daily life. Right consciousness creates. If you're beginning to see how your internal state shapes your external reality, the practical application of consciousness creating reality begins with understanding one of the most powerful concepts in spiritual prosperity, the interior hall of your mind. This isn't metaphorical poetry, it's a precise description of how your consciousness actually operates. Right now, as you're listening to this, there exists within you a sacred space that functions like an architect's blueprint for your entire external experience. Picture this interior hall as a room constructed not of physical materials, but of thoughts, beliefs, and mental images. Every wall represents a core conviction you hold about yourself, about money, about what's possible in your life. Every piece of furniture symbolizes an idea you've placed, there consciously or unconsciously. The lighting in this room reflects the quality of your faith, and the overall atmosphere determines what kind of experiences manifest in your physical reality. Most people have never consciously entered this space. They've allowed it to be furnished by random thoughts, inherited beliefs, media programming, and cultural conditioning. The result is a cluttered, chaotic mental environment that produces equally chaotic external results. But when you begin to take conscious ownership of this interior space, everything changes. This visualization practice I'm about to share isn't a game or simple relaxation technique. It's a discipline that can literally reshape your relationship with abundance. The transformation happens when you learn to enter this mental space with intention and begin arranging it to reflect your highest vision rather than your current circumstances or past limitations. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine stepping into this interior hall of your mind. Notice how everything has a specific place and purpose. There's a beautiful table in the center, and written across its surface is your divine purpose. Not what you think you should do for money, but what your soul came here to express. This table represents your foundation, the stable platform from which all your decisions and actions emerge. Notice the lamp that illuminates this space. This isn't ordinary light. It's the radiance of your faith, your deep knowing, that you're supported by infinite intelligence. When this lamp burns brightly, you see opportunities where others see obstacles. When it dims due to doubt or fear, shadows creep in and distort your perception of what's possible. Look toward the window that offers a view beyond this room. This represents your spiritual vision, your ability to see beyond current circumstances to the divine potential that's always available. Through this window, you glimpse not just what is, but what can be when you align your consciousness with divine principle. The hidden truth is that this interior space determines everything about your external experience. If this hall is dark, cluttered with limiting beliefs and fearful thoughts, your outer life reflects that chaos. If it's filled with noise from other people's opinions and expectations, you lose connection to your authentic path. But when you keep this space clear, luminous, and aligned with your highest truth, your external world begins to mirror that same order and beauty. Behind the scenes of every major breakthrough in my life, I can trace the transformation back to changes I made in this interior space. Before the money appeared, before the opportunities manifested, before the relationships aligned, there was always a shift in consciousness that happened first in this sacred hall of mind. The impact of this practice extends beyond personal prosperity into every area of your life. When you learn to consciously design your interior space, you develop the ability to create rather than simply react. You become the architect of your experience rather than a victim of circumstances. Now, the key to making this practice truly effective lies in understanding how to systematically clear out the mental clutter that's been blocking your abundance and replace it with thoughts, images, and beliefs that align with your divine prosperity. Put down, "My mind is my sanctuary," if you're ready to take conscious control of your interior space. The law of mental equivalent operates with mathematical precision in your life, whether you're aware of it or not. This isn't mystical theory, it's a practical principle that you can observe in every area of your experience once you know what to look for. The quality of your interior hall directly determines the quality of your external circumstances with the same reliability that a blueprint determines the structure of a building. When your mental space is dark, cluttered with worry, doubt and scarcity thinking, your external life inevitably fills with shadows. Your financial situation reflects confusion and waste. Your relationships lack clarity and depth. Your opportunities seem limited, and your path feels uncertain. This isn't punishment from the universe, it's simply the natural outworking of consciousness creating form. But here's where the transformation becomes truly exciting. When you consciously maintain your interior hall as a clear, luminous space filled with thoughts of abundance, gratitude, and divine possibility, your external world begins to respond with equivalent forms. Money flows more easily because your consciousness isn't blocking it with fear and limitation. Opportunities appear because your awareness is trained to recognize them. Relationships improve because you're radiating wholeness rather than neediness. The hidden truth that revolutionizes everything is this: you cannot manifest more in your external life than you're capable of conceiving and sustaining in your interior hall. This is why so many people struggle, despite working incredibly hard, despite having good intentions, despite trying every strategy and technique they can find. They're attempting to create external results without first establishing the consciousness that can support those results. Most of our culture has this completely backwards. We're taught to seek things first, to chase money, opportunities, relationships, recognition, believing that acquiring these external forms will somehow change how we feel inside. But the principle works in the opposite direction. The kingdom must be established within before it can manifest without. When you hit that subscribe button, you're telling me that you're ready for more than surface-level success advice. You want the deeper teachings, the spiritual principles, and the transformational content that actually creates lasting change. I create every video for people exactly like you, and I'd be honored to have you as part of this conscious community. This revelation completely transforms your priorities and your daily decisions. Instead of frantically trying to earn more money, you focus on ordering your consciousness to align with abundance. Instead of desperately seeking opportunities, you cultivate the inner state that magnetizes perfect opportunities. Instead of trying to impress others with external achievements, you develop the interior qualities that naturally attract respect and admiration. Behind the scenes of every sustainable success story, you'll find someone who understood this principle either consciously or intuitively. They may not have used spiritual language to describe it, but they invested heavily in their mindset, their character, their inner development before expecting massive external results. They built the consciousness first, and the manifestation followed naturally. The impact of this understanding on your journey toward prosperity cannot be overstated. It means that right now, regardless of your current circumstances, you have access to unlimited potential. Your bank account, your job title, your social status, none of these determine what's possible for you. What determines your future is your willingness to enter that interior hall and begin the sacred work of consciousness transformation. This isn't about positive thinking or visualization techniques, though those can be useful tools. This is about fundamental reorganization of your mental and spiritual foundations. It's about becoming someone who can conceive, attract, and sustain the level of abundance that aligns with your divine nature. The practical question becomes, how do you systematically clear out the mental clutter that's been limiting your capacity to conceive and receive abundance? How do you identify and transform the specific thoughts, beliefs, and patterns that have been keeping your interior hall in darkness? Right, consciousness first. If you're understanding why the inner work must come before the outer results. The distinction between empty luxury and soulfulness reveals one of the most profound secrets about true prosperity. Empty luxury represents the frantic accumulation of forms without any real content, attempting to fill a spiritual void with physical objects, status symbols, and external validation. It's the mansion that feels cold despite its grandeur, the expensive car that provides no real satisfaction, the designer, clothes that never quite make you feel worthy enough. This empty accumulation creates a vicious cycle that traps millions of people. The more they acquire without addressing their inner emptiness, the more they need to acquire to maintain the illusion of success. They become prisoners of their possessions, constantly anxious about losing what they have while simultaneously craving more. Their self-worth becomes tied to their net worth, creating a fragile foundation that can crumble with any economic shift or personal setback. Soulfulness operates on a completely different principle. It's silent abundance that radiates from within, requiring no external proof or validation. When your soul is genuinely full, when you're connected to your divine source and aligned with your authentic purpose, there's a quality of presence that attracts abundance naturally. You don't need to display your worth because you embody it. You don't need to prove your value because you know it intimately. This transformation in consciousness creates fascinating revelations about the true nature of wealth. I've witnessed people living in single rooms who possess more genuine peace, joy, and abundance than others residing in million-dollar estates. The difference isn't in their circumstances, it's in their consciousness. Those living simply but with ordered minds have discovered that mental order attracts material order with the same reliability that a magnet attracts metal. The hidden truth is that real wealth always reflects well-directed thought. When your interior hall is organized, clear, and aligned with abundance consciousness, your external world begins to mirror that same order. Resources appear when needed, not through struggle or manipulation, but through the natural law of attraction that operates when consciousness is properly aligned. Behind the scenes of this principle, something remarkable happens to your relationship with material things. When your security comes from within rather than from external accumulation, you make completely different decisions about money, possessions, and lifestyle. You choose quality over quantity, meaning over status, substance over appearance. Your spending reflects your values rather than your insecurities. The impact of this shift extends far beyond personal finance into every aspect of your life experience. When you're not constantly trying to fill an inner void through external means, your creativity flourishes. Your relationships deepen because you're not using people to validate your worth. Your health improves because you're not stressed about maintaining an image that doesn't align with your authentic self. What's fascinating is how this principle challenges everything our consumer culture teaches about success and happiness. We're constantly bombarded with messages suggesting that the next purchase, the next achievement, the next acquisition will finally bring the satisfaction we're seeking. But those who have discovered soulfulness understand that satisfaction comes from alignment with divine purpose, not from accumulation of material forms. This journey from empty luxury to soulfulness requires a fundamental shift in how you define wealth, success, and abundance. It means learning to find richness in simplicity, discovering luxury in peace, and recognizing that the most elegant state is one where your external life authentically reflects your internal values, rather than compensating for internal poverty. The practical question that emerges from this understanding is, how do you cultivate this soulfulness in a world that constantly encourages empty accumulation? How do you train your mind to recognize and create genuine abundance rather than its hollow counterfeit? Right, soulfulness wins if you're ready to choose authentic abundance over empty accumulation. The cultivation of soulfulness begins with understanding what I call scientific prayer of gratitude, and this practice alone can revolutionize your entire relationship with abundance. Most people have been taught to pray from a place of lack, begging for what they don't have, pleading with God to change their circumstances, approaching the divine as if they were impoverished beings seeking charity from a distant benefactor. But scientific prayer operates on a completely different frequency. This isn't supplication or petition, it's a precise affirmation that all good is already present in the spiritual realm, simply waiting to manifest in physical form. It's a mental action that deliberately tunes your consciousness to the source of all abundance, aligning your awareness with divine provision rather than material limitation. The transformation that happens when you shift from begging to affirming is immediate and profound. Instead of reinforcing your sense of lack through prayer, you're training your consciousness to recognize and receive the abundance that's always available. You're not trying to convince God to give you something. You're opening your awareness to perceive what has already been given. This practice becomes the foundation for developing authentic interior elegance because it establishes your identity as someone who is connected to infinite source rather than dependent on finite circumstances. When you pray from this consciousness, you're not asking from poverty, you're acknowledging from abundance. You're not hoping for change, you're recognizing present reality at the spiritual level. The specific prayer that has transformed countless lives goes like this. Thank you, my God, because at this moment, everything I need has already been given to me. Thank you, because my soul is full, my mind is clear, and my path is secure. This isn't positive thinking or wishful hoping, it's a statement of spiritual fact that becomes your lived experience as you align with its truth. Behind the scenes of this practice, something remarkable happens to your nervous system and your decision-making process. When you begin each day by affirming that everything you need has already been provided, your mind stops operating from desperation and starts functioning from confidence. Your choices become aligned with abundance rather than driven by scarcity. Your actions flow from trust rather than fear. The impact extends into every practical aspect of your life. When you truly believe that your path is secure, you make different career decisions. When you know that your soul is full, you stop trying to fill voids through consumption. When you recognize that your mind is clear, you trust your intuition and make decisions with greater precision and less second-guessing. What's fascinating about this approach is how it naturally eliminates the internal resistance that blocks manifestation. Most people unconsciously sabotage their own abundance because they don't believe they deserve it, or because they fear the responsibility that comes with prosperity. But when gratitude becomes your dominant mental state, these limiting beliefs dissolve naturally. This daily practice must become what I call an interior decision, not just words you recite, but a fundamental choice about how you're going to relate to life itself. It's deciding to live from gratitude rather than need, from fullness rather than emptiness, from divine connection rather than human separation. The repetition of this prayer isn't about convincing God or even convincing yourself. It's about training your consciousness to operate from a higher frequency where abundance is natural rather than exceptional. Each time you repeat these words with genuine feeling, you're literally rewiring your mental patterns and establishing new neural pathways that support prosperity consciousness. Now, as powerful as this gratitude practice is, it becomes exponentially more effective when combined with a specific understanding of how divine order operates in practical affairs and how you can align your daily actions with spiritual principles. Right, already given, if you're ready to pray from abundance rather than lack. Living in gratitude becomes a complete lifestyle transformation that goes far beyond morning prayers or positive affirmations. When you make the conscious decision to see beauty everywhere, to think in order rather than chaos, and to approach each moment from appreciation rather than need, something extraordinary happens. The universe responds to your new frequency like an echo responds to a shout, reflecting back the same quality of energy you're putting out. This shift reveals one of the most liberating discoveries you can make on your journey toward authentic prosperity. You begin to realize that you don't actually need nearly as many things as you once believed. Those desires that used to feel so urgent and compelling start to lose their grip on you. The external things you were frantically seeking, validation, security, fulfillment, peace, you discover you already carry within your own consciousness. Behind the scenes of this revelation, your entire value system undergoes a quiet revolution. Instead of measuring your worth by what you own or achieve, You start recognizing your inherent value as a spiritual being. Instead of constantly acquiring to fill voids, you begin expressing the fullness that already exists within you. This doesn't make you passive or unmotivated. It makes you incredibly selective about where you invest your energy and attention. The hidden truth that makes this transformation possible is understanding that the entire universe operates according to divine order. This isn't religious doctrine or philosophical theory. It's observable reality that you can witness everywhere you look, from the precise trajectory of planets to the intricate geometry of a simple wildflower, from the perfect timing of seasons to the miraculous coordination of your own heartbeat and breathing. Everything in creation follows exact, harmonious patterns. This divine order isn't accidental or coincidental. It's the visible face of spiritual law expressing itself through every level of existence. When you begin to recognize and align with this order, your life starts flowing with the same precision and harmony that governs the movements of stars and the growth of forests. Your decisions become more accurate, your timing improves, and your results reflect the same divine intelligence that orchestrates all of nature. The impact of this understanding on your approach to prosperity is revolutionary. Instead of fighting against life or trying to force outcomes through willpower alone, you learn to cooperate with the intelligent order that already exists. You start recognizing that abundance flows according to spiritual laws just as predictably as water flows downhill or plants grow towards sunlight. This recognition transforms your entire decision-making process. When you understand that divine order governs everything, you stop making frantic, fear-based choices and start making decisions that align with natural timing and universal harmony. You begin to trust that there's an intelligence greater than your personal mind, orchestrating events for your highest good. What's fascinating is how this principle applies to the most practical aspects of building wealth and creating success. The same order that governs planetary orbits also governs the flow of resources, opportunities, and relationships in your life. When you align your consciousness with this order, you tap into a source of guidance and support that far exceeds what your individual effort could accomplish. This doesn't mean becoming passive or waiting for miracles. It means becoming incredibly conscious about how you think, speak, and act, ensuring that your choices harmonize with divine principle rather than working against it. It means learning to recognize the patterns and timing that characterize how abundance actually moves in the world. Now, the question becomes, how do you practically apply this understanding of divine order to organize your own consciousness and align your daily actions with the same intelligence that orchestrates all of creation? Right, divine order guides me, if you're ready to align with the intelligence that governs all things. The practical application of divine order begins with a revelation that challenges everything most people believe about financial struggle and economic hardship. When you examine the root causes of so-called economic problems, you discover that they rarely originate in external economic conditions. Instead, they have their roots in misdirected thought, scattered attention, and the absence of clear purpose. The external chaos is simply reflecting the internal disorder. This understanding completely transforms how you approach any financial challenge you might be facing. Instead of looking outside yourself for solutions, blaming the economy, your industry, your boss, your circumstances, you begin to recognize that the real work happens in ordering your interior house. God isn't absent from your situation. Divine intelligence isn't withholding abundance from you. The infinite source is simply waiting for you to create the internal conditions that can receive and steward prosperity effectively. Most people have this backwards. They believe that if they could just change their external circumstances, their internal state would automatically improve, but the principle works in the opposite direction. When you organize your thoughts, clarify your purpose, and focus your attention with precision, your external circumstances begin to reorganize themselves to match your new internal order. Behind the scenes of every financial breakthrough, you'll find someone who stopped scattering their mental energy and started directing it with intention. They may not have used spiritual language to describe their process, but they intuitively understood that clarity of thought creates clarity of results, that focused attention generates focused outcomes, and that purposeful action produces purposeful manifestation. Jesus illustrated this principle with profound precision in the parable of talents. A master entrusts different amounts of resources to 3 servants before departing on a journey. 2 of the servants invest wisely and double what they've been given, but the third, operating from fear and confusion, buries his talent and returns it unchanged. The master's response reveals a fundamental law of consciousness. To those who have, more will be given. From those who have not, even what they have will be taken away. This isn't about favoritism or unfairness. It's about demonstrating alignment with divine order. Those who think clearly, plan wisely, and care gratefully for what they possess receive more because they've proven they can handle increased responsibility. They've shown that their consciousness is organized enough to be entrusted with greater abundance. The hidden truth embedded in this teaching is that stewardship consciousness is prosperity consciousness. When you take excellent care of what you currently have, whether it's much or little, you signal to the universe that you're ready for more. When you approach your current resources with gratitude rather than complaint, with wisdom rather than carelessness, with clear thinking rather than scattered attention, you align yourself with the same divine order that governs all increase. The impact of this understanding on your daily financial decisions is immediate and practical. Instead of waiting until you have more money to start managing it well, you begin managing what you have with the same care you would give to millions. Instead of being careless with small amounts because they seem insignificant, you recognize that how you handle little things determines your capacity to handle bigger things. What's fascinating is how this principle applies to every area of your life, not just money. How you care for your health, your relationships, your time, your environment. All of these demonstrate your level of consciousness and your readiness for increased responsibility and abundance. This shift from scattered thinking to ordered consciousness, from careless stewardship to grateful management, from unclear purpose to focused intention, creates the foundation for sustainable prosperity that can weather any external economic storm. Now, the question becomes, how do you practically identify and transform the specific mental patterns that have been creating chaos in your external results? And what are the concrete steps for establishing the kind of interior order that attracts sustained abundance? Right, interior order creates exterior order if you're seeing the connection between your mental state and your material results. The practical work of establishing interior order begins with what I call a spiritual inventory, and this simple exercise will reveal patterns that have been operating unconsciously in your life for years. Most people have never systematically examined the relationship between their frequent thoughts about money, work, and future possibilities, and the actual results showing up in their external experience. Take a moment to imagine dividing a sheet of paper into 2 columns. In the left column, you write down your most frequent thoughts about financial matters, not what you think you should think, not what sounds spiritual or positive, but what actually runs through your mind on a regular basis. These might include thoughts like, money is hard to come by, I never have enough, rich people are greedy, or I don't deserve abundance. Be completely honest about the mental commentary that plays in the background of your consciousness. In the right column, you record how these thoughts are currently reflecting in your external life. Where does your money actually go? What patterns show up in your spending, earning, and financial decision-making? How do these mental habits translate into real-world results? This isn't about judgment or self-criticism. It's about developing clarity regarding the precise connection between consciousness and manifestation. The revelations that emerge from this exercise are consistently profound. People discover that when they think there's never enough, they tend to spend impulsively, trying to grab opportunities before they disappear. When they believe, "I don't deserve prosperity," they unconsciously avoid opportunities or sabotage their own success. When they fear that everything is uncertain, they make decisions from panic rather than wisdom, creating the very instability they're trying to avoid. Behind the scenes of this inventory process, you begin to see how your external economy is simply your internal economy made visible. Every financial pattern, every money habit, every economic result can be traced back to a corresponding belief or thought pattern. This understanding is simultaneously humbling and empowering. Humbling because it reveals how much of your struggle has been self-created. Empowering because it shows you exactly where to direct your transformation efforts. The beautiful truth is that you can reorganize your consciousness with the same systematic approach you would use to clean a cluttered room. Mental reorganization isn't mystical or complicated. It's a deliberate process of replacing chaotic thought patterns with ordered ones, substituting scarcity programming with abundance awareness, and establishing new mental systems that support prosperity rather than sabotage it. This transformation happens through the consistent application of what I call consciousness restructuring affirmations. These aren't generic positive statements, but precise declarations that directly address the specific mental patterns you've identified in your inventory. When you affirm, "Divine order governs my life," everything in me responds to God's wisdom. You're not just repeating nice words, you're literally rewiring the neural pathways that have been generating your current results. The impact of this mental reorganization extends far beyond financial matters into every aspect of your life experience. When your thoughts become ordered, your decisions improve. When your consciousness aligns with divine wisdom, your timing becomes more accurate. When your mental house is clean and organized, your external life begins reflecting that same clarity and purpose. What's fascinating is how quickly this process can produce tangible results when applied consistently. Just as cleaning a physical space immediately changes how you feel in that environment, cleaning your mental space produces an immediate shift in your energy, confidence, and decision-making capacity. The external changes may take time to manifest, but the internal transformation begins the moment you commit to this work. The journey from scattered consciousness to ordered awareness requires patience and persistence, but it's the most practical investment you can make in your future prosperity. Every thought you reorganize, every limiting belief you replace, every mental pattern you upgrade creates a stronger foundation for sustained abundance. Now, the question becomes, what specific practices can you implement daily to maintain this new mental order and prevent the old patterns from reasserting themselves, especially when you face challenges or setbacks that trigger your previous ways of thinking? Write "Reorganizing Now" if you're ready to take inventory of your thought patterns and begin the transformation process. The maintenance of this new mental order requires understanding one of Christ's most misunderstood teachings about the narrow door. When Jesus spoke about striving to enter through the narrow door, he wasn't describing a limitation imposed by a restrictive God. He was revealing a profound truth about conscious choice and the necessity of selective awareness in a world designed to scatter your attention and dilute your spiritual focus. The door isn't narrow because divine love is exclusive or because abundance is limited. The door appears narrow because the human mind, constantly bombarded by stimuli and conditioned by a culture of endless wanting, has thickened its body of desires to the point where it can no longer fit through the opening that leads to genuine prosperity. We've accumulated so many borrowed wants, artificial needs, and culturally imposed aspirations that we've lost the ability to move through the gateway that requires spiritual lightness and mental clarity. This understanding completely transforms your approach to personal development and goal setting. Most people believe that more enthusiasm equals better results, that having bigger dreams automatically leads to greater success, that wanting more things more intensely will somehow generate the energy needed to manifest them. But this approach actually works against the principle of the narrow door. Behind the scenes of every authentic breakthrough, you'll find someone who learned to choose discernment over enthusiasm. They discovered that the soul doesn't realize itself through accumulating quantities of achievements, possessions, or experiences. Instead, soul fulfillment comes through the quality of your aspirations, through choosing desires that align with your divine nature rather than collecting wants that reflect cultural programming or ego compensation. The transformation that happens when you shift from quantity to quality is immediate and profound. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by endless possibilities and conflicting desires, you develop laser-focused clarity about what truly matters. Instead of exhausting yourself chasing multiple goals simultaneously, you channel your energy into aspirations that genuinely serve your spiritual evolution and contribute to the greater good. This discernment process requires what I call conscious downsizing of desires, not because wanting things is wrong, but because every desire you entertain requires mental and emotional energy to maintain. When your consciousness is cluttered with hundreds of wants, wishes, and goals, you don't have enough focused power to manifest any of them effectively. It's like trying to water a garden with a hose that has dozens of holes in it. The pressure dissipates before it can nourish anything meaningfully. The impact of this selective approach extends far beyond personal productivity into the realm of spiritual maturity. When you learn to distinguish between desires that elevate your consciousness and those that merely distract from your purpose, you begin operating from a completely different level of inner authority. Your choices become expressions of wisdom, rather than reactions to impulse or cultural pressure. What's fascinating is how this principle applies to financial goals and career aspirations. Many people fail to achieve lasting prosperity because they're pursuing too many financial objectives simultaneously, diluting their focus and confusing their subconscious mind about what they actually want to create. When you narrow your focus to one or two deeply meaningful financial goals that align with your spiritual purpose, your manifestation power increases exponentially. The journey through the narrow door requires releasing the excess baggage of unnecessary desires, borrowed dreams, and ego-driven ambitions that have been weighing down your consciousness. This isn't about becoming less ambitious, it's about becoming more precise in your ambition, more selective in your pursuits, more aligned with your authentic spiritual calling. Now the question becomes, how do you practically develop this discernment to distinguish between desires that serve your highest good and those that merely serve your conditioned personality? And what daily practices can help you maintain this clarity when the world constantly encourages you to want more of everything? Right, quality over quantity. If you're ready to choose fewer, deeper aspirations over scattered surface desires. The development of this discernment requires establishing what I consider the most transformative daily practice for anyone serious about prosperity consciousness. 15 minutes of deliberate mental silencing. This isn't the kind of evasive meditation where you're trying to escape reality or zone out from your responsibilities. This is a concrete, practical discipline designed to stop the constant mental noise and create space to hear what divine intelligence is already communicating to you about your path, your purpose, and your next right actions. Most people live their entire lives without ever experiencing true mental silence. Their minds are constantly churning with thoughts, worries, plans, reactions, and mental commentary. In this state of perpetual noise, it's impossible to distinguish between the voice of wisdom and the chatter of conditioning. The soul doesn't shout over this mental commotion, it whispers. And if you never create silence, you never hear these whispers that contain the guidance you've been seeking. Behind the scenes of every major life decision, every creative breakthrough, every moment of clarity about your authentic direction, there's usually been a period of silence that allowed deeper wisdom to emerge. The most successful people I know have learned, either consciously or intuitively, to create regular spaces of mental stillness where they can access insights that aren't available to the analytical mind. The transformation that happens when you commit to this daily practice is immediate and cumulative. Within just a few days, you begin to notice a difference in the quality of your thoughts and decisions. Within weeks, you develop a kind of inner compass that guides you toward choices aligned with your highest good. Within months, you're operating from a completely different level of awareness and authority. During this practice, you'll inevitably encounter desires, worries, and mental patterns that try to capture your attention and pull you back into reactive thinking. This is where understanding the golden key technique becomes absolutely essential. When confusion arises about whether a particular desire serves your highest good, when you feel torn between different options, when your mind gets caught in analysis paralysis, you don't need to fight these thoughts or spend hours trying to figure them out intellectually. The golden key works by completely redirecting your mental focus rather than engaging with the confusion. Instead of wrestling with the problem or trying to resolve it through thinking, you simply turn your attention to divine intelligence and release the entire situation. The specific practice involves saying, either out loud or silently, I release this and put my mind on God. God is order. God is wisdom. God is good. God knows what I don't know. The impact of this technique is remarkable because it operates on a principle of mental transcendence rather than mental manipulation. You're not trying to think your way to a solution. You're lifting your consciousness above the level where the problem exists and allowing divine intelligence to handle what your personal mind cannot resolve. What's fascinating is how consistently this approach produces clarity and resolution. Often within minutes or hours of applying the golden key, the confusion dissolves and the right course of action becomes obvious. Sometimes the entire situation transforms in ways you never could have planned or anticipated. The answers don't come through logical analysis, but through an inner knowing that emerges when you stop interfering with divine guidance. This combination of daily mental silencing and the golden key technique creates a foundation for decision-making that operates from wisdom rather than worry, from divine guidance rather than human speculation. It establishes your life on spiritual principles that produce practical results far more reliable than strategies based on external circumstances or conventional thinking. Now the question becomes, how do you integrate these practices into a comprehensive approach that transforms not just your thinking, but your actual relationship with money, service, and the circulation of abundance in your daily life? Right, divine guidance leads me if you're ready to develop this direct connection to spiritual wisdom. The integration of divine guidance into your daily decisions creates the foundation for what becomes the most profound act of self-love you can practice, the conscious filtering of your desires. This isn't about becoming less passionate or ambitious. It's about demonstrating genuine respect for your energy, your time, and your soul by choosing carefully what deserves your attention and pursuit. Most people have never realized that filtering desires is actually a spiritual practice. They allow every impulse, every advertisement, every cultural suggestion, every moment of envy or comparison to plant seeds in their consciousness. But here's the hidden truth. No one can build a solid, meaningful life using borrowed materials, and unexamined desires are exactly that. Borrowed dreams, inherited expectations, and culturally programmed wants that have nothing to do with your authentic spiritual calling. Behind the scenes of every life that feels scattered and unfulfilled, you'll find someone who never learned to discriminate between desires that serve their evolution and desires that merely serve their conditioning. They've been chasing goals that belong to their parents, their peers, their culture, or their wounded ego, wondering why achievement never brings the satisfaction they expected. The transformation that happens when you begin consciously filtering your desires is like moving from a house filled with other people's furniture to a space that truly reflects your essence. You discover that you actually want much less than you thought, but what you want is far more meaningful and aligned with your purpose. Your energy becomes focused rather than scattered, your progress becomes measurable rather than chaotic, and your satisfaction becomes genuine rather than superficial. This discernment process naturally leads to understanding one of the most misunderstood principles in spiritual prosperity, the true meaning of tithing. Most people think tithing is about percentages, calculations, and religious obligations. But authentic tithing has nothing to do with mathematics and everything to do with consciousness. It's not about how much you give, it's about from where you give. True tithing is the practical recognition in action that everything you possess comes from divine source. When you give from this consciousness, you're not sacrificing or losing anything. You're participating in the circulation of abundance, acknowledging that you're a channel rather than a container, demonstrating that your security comes from connection to infinite source rather than from accumulation of finite resources. The impact of this understanding completely transforms your relationship with money and possessions. When you truly know that divine source is unlimited and that you're connected to that source, giving becomes joyful rather than fearful. You're not depleting your reserves. You're opening the channels through which more abundance can flow. You're not proving your worthiness. You're expressing your understanding of how spiritual law operates. What's fascinating is how this principle applies to every form of giving, not just monetary donations. When you give your time, attention, skills, or energy from the consciousness that recognizes divine source as unlimited, those gifts multiply and return to you in ways that often surpass what you could have achieved through direct effort alone. Behind the scenes of this transformation, your entire nervous system shifts from scarcity-based thinking to abundance-based awareness. Instead of hoarding and protecting, you begin circulating and sharing. Instead of fearing loss, you anticipate increase. Instead of operating from limitation, you function from the knowledge that there's always enough when you're aligned with divine principle. This shift in consciousness about giving and receiving creates a completely different relationship with wealth building and financial planning. You stop trying to accumulate from fear and start circulating from faith. You recognize that money is simply energy, and like all energy, it's meant to flow rather than stagnate. Now the question becomes, how do you cultivate this consciousness of circulation and abundance in a culture that constantly encourages hoarding and scarcity thinking, and what practical steps can you take to embody this understanding in your daily financial decisions? Write, I am a channel. If you're beginning to see yourself as a conduit for abundance rather than a container trying to fill itself, the cultivation of this channel consciousness finds its perfect illustration in one of the most powerful stories in biblical literature, the widow of Zarephath. During a severe drought and famine, the prophet Elijah encounters a woman who has only enough flour and oil for one final meal before she and her son face starvation. Instead of asking her to wait until her circumstances improve, Elijah makes what seems like an impossible request: prepare his meal first, using her last ingredients. Most people would see this as unreasonable or even cruel, but Elijah understood a principle that operates beyond conventional logic. He wasn't being selfish. He was offering the woman an opportunity to demonstrate faith in divine provision when all external evidence suggested scarcity. The widow's willingness to give from her apparent lack activated a law of spiritual multiplication that sustained her household throughout the entire famine period. Behind the scenes of this story lies a profound revelation about how gratitude and abundance actually work. The widow didn't wait until she had plenty before expressing generosity. She gave from what little she had, and this action of faith created the very abundance she needed. True gratitude doesn't wait to receive before manifesting. It appears before, during, and after manifestation, which is precisely why it becomes creative and multiplying rather than merely reactive. This understanding completely transforms how you approach gratitude in your own life. Most people practice gratitude as a response to good things that have already happened, but the consciousness that creates ongoing abundance practices gratitude as a cause rather than an effect. You become grateful for what exists in potential, for what you know is already yours in divine mind, for the invisible resources that are always available when you align your consciousness properly. The practical application of this principle involves what I call the 40-day gratitude journal, and this practice alone has transformed more lives than any other single technique I've ever taught. The commitment is simple but profound. Write 10 reasons for gratitude every day for 40 consecutive days without repeating a single item. This forces you to look deeper, to notice subtleties, to find abundance in places you've never recognized it before. The transformation happens because you're literally rewiring your brain's default patterns. Instead of automatically focusing on what's missing, lacking, or problematic, you train your awareness to consistently identify what's working, flowing, and abundant. You begin thanking for the visible and invisible, for what hasn't yet manifested, even for challenges, because you start recognizing them as growth, zones that expand your capacity to receive and handle greater abundance. What's fascinating about this practice is how it affects your decision-making and your relationship with money. When gratitude becomes your dominant mental state, you naturally make choices from abundance rather than scarcity. You invest rather than hoard. You circulate rather than cling. You see opportunities where you previously saw only obstacles. The impact extends far beyond personal psychology into the realm of practical manifestation. When you're genuinely grateful for what you haven't yet received, you create a magnetic field that attracts those very things. You're not manipulating the universe, you're aligning your consciousness with the frequency of abundance, which naturally draws more abundant experiences into your reality. Behind the scenes of this practice, something remarkable happens to your nervous system and your energy field. The stress response that comes from constantly focusing on problems begins to dissolve. Your creativity increases because fear isn't blocking your access to inspiration. Your intuition sharpens because you're not drowning out its subtle guidance with worry and complaint. This 40-day journey becomes a complete transformation of your relationship with life itself. You move from being someone who notices what's wrong to someone who consistently recognizes what's right. You shift from operating in reaction mode to functioning from appreciation mode. You discover that abundance isn't something you need to create. It's something you need to recognize and receive. Now, the question becomes, how do you sustain this consciousness of gratitude and abundance, even when facing genuine challenges or setbacks? And what role does the power of your words play in either supporting or sabotaging this entire transformation process? Write, grateful before receiving. If you're ready to practice gratitude as a creative force rather than just a response, the sustaining of gratitude consciousness through challenges brings us to understanding one of the most powerful yet overlooked aspects of creating abundance: the profound influence of your words and the conditions under which you speak them. Most people have no idea that every word they utter is literally a seed planted in the soil of consciousness. But here's the crucial point that changes everything. Not every word germinates because not every word has been planted in adequate soil. The adequate soil for words that create rather than just express isn't found in noise, urgency, or emotional reactivity. The fertile ground where your words take root and grow into manifestation is silence. This understanding completely transforms how you approach affirmations, prayers, goal setting, and even casual conversation. When words emerge from silence rather than noise, they carry a completely different creative power. Most people scatter their words like seeds thrown on concrete. They make declarations while stressed, speak affirmations while distracted, set intentions while their minds are churning with worry and doubt. These words have no power to manifest because they haven't been planted in the consciousness that can nurture them into reality. They're just mental noise disguised as spiritual practice. Behind the scenes of every word that manifests into form, there's been a quality of consciousness that provided the fertile soil for that word to take root. The most successful people I know, whether they realize it or not, have learned to speak their most important words from a place of inner stillness and centered awareness. Their declarations carry weight because they emerge from depth rather than surface agitation. The transformation that happens when you learn to cultivate fertile silence before speaking your creative words is immediate and profound. Your affirmations stop feeling empty and start carrying conviction. Your prayers move from begging to declaring. Your goal setting shifts from wishful thinking to authoritative command. The words themselves may be the same, but the consciousness from which they emerge is completely different. The practice of fertile silence that I'm about to share has 3 distinct phases, each serving a specific purpose in preparing the soil of consciousness for powerful word seeds. The first 5 minutes involve simply observing your thoughts without fighting them or following them. You're not trying to stop thinking. You're developing the capacity to witness the mental activity without being consumed by it. This creates space between you and your thoughts, establishing you as the observer rather than the victim of mental chatter. The next 5 minutes require fixing your attention on one divine idea. This could be, God is my source, divine order governs my life, or infinite intelligence guides my path. You're not repeating it mechanically, but feeling into its truth, allowing its reality to permeate your consciousness. This phase fertilizes your mental soil with divine awareness, creating the perfect conditions for creative words to take root. The final 5 minutes of absolute silence are where the magic happens. No thoughts, no words, no mental activity, just pure receptive awareness. This is the fertile ground where words planted afterward will germinate with extraordinary power. When you speak your intentions, affirmations, or prayers from this state of consciousness, they carry the authority of silence behind them. The impact of this practice extends far beyond personal manifestation into every area where you use words to create change or influence. Your conversations become more powerful because you're speaking from presence rather than reactivity. Your business communications carry more authority because they emerge from centered awareness. Your relationships improve because your words reflect inner peace rather than inner chaos. What's fascinating is how this approach reveals the difference between words that merely describe your current reality and words that actually create new reality. When spoken from fertile silence, your words stop being commentary on what is and start being commands for what will be. Now, the question becomes, how do you apply this understanding of creative speech to transform your relationship with service, contribution, and the circulation of abundance in ways that multiply your prosperity while elevating others? Write words from silence if you're ready to speak your intentions from this place of fertile consciousness. The application of creative speech from fertile silence leads us to understanding what constitutes a true metaphysical treatment, and this practice represents the highest form of conscious word creation available to human consciousness. Most people approach prayer and manifestation work as petitioners, describing their problems and asking for divine intervention. But a metaphysical treatment operates on a completely different principle. It's a declaration of truth pronounced from the soul with absolute authority. When you create a treatment, you're not explaining your situation to God or trying to convince the universe to help you. You're speaking as someone who recognizes their divine nature and understands that spiritual law operates with mathematical precision. You write your treatment, pronounce it with conviction, and then release it completely to the law, trusting that divine intelligence will handle all the details of manifestation. The transformation that happens when you shift from petitioning to declaring is extraordinary. Instead of approaching abundance from a position of lack, you speak from a consciousness of wholeness. Instead of hoping for change, you authoritatively state what is already true in divine mind. Instead of begging for assistance, you cooperate with spiritual law from a place of understanding and alignment. Behind the scenes of this practice, you're literally training your consciousness to operate from its highest capacity. When you write and speak treatments regularly, you develop an unshakable sense of your own spiritual authority. You begin to know, not just believe, that you have the power to influence your reality through aligned consciousness and purposeful word creation. This understanding of creative authority naturally leads to recognizing one of the most profound principles of spiritual prosperity, the law of service as multiplication. Jesus demonstrated this law in one of his most radical acts when he washed the feet of his disciples. Here was the master, the teacher, the recognized spiritual authority performing the function of a servant. But this wasn't humiliation. It was revelation of how divine expansion actually works. The soul that serves expands. This isn't moral philosophy or religious obligation, it's spiritual physics. In a universe governed by cause and effect, every action impregnated with pure intention to benefit others generates a multiplied return that often surprises even those who understand the principle intellectually. When you serve from genuine love rather than from obligation or strategy, you activate forces that work beyond what personal effort alone could accomplish. The hidden truth that most people miss is that service isn't separate from prosperity. It's one of the most reliable pathways to authentic abundance. When you contribute value to others without attachment to immediate return, when you help solve problems that matter, when you use your gifts to make life better for people around you, you create what I call invisible income streams that manifest in unexpected and often remarkable ways. The impact of this service consciousness extends far beyond personal benefit into the realm of purpose and meaning. When you approach your work, your relationships, and your daily interactions from a service mindset, every activity becomes infused with significance. You're not just earning money, you're contributing to the betterment of life. You're not just building a career, you're expressing your divine nature through helpful action. What's fascinating is how this principle resolves the false conflict between spiritual development and material success. When service becomes your pathway to prosperity, you never have to choose between doing good and doing well. Your financial growth becomes aligned with your spiritual growth because both are expressions of your expanding capacity to contribute value to the world. Behind the scenes of every sustainable business success, every lasting financial achievement, every form of prosperity that brings deep satisfaction rather than empty accumulation, you'll find this principle of service-based abundance operating either consciously or unconsciously. Now, the question becomes, how do you practically implement service consciousness in your daily life and work in ways that naturally generate both spiritual fulfillment and material abundance, while avoiding the ego traps that can corrupt even well-intentioned service? Right service expands souls. If you're beginning to see how giving and receiving are two aspects of the same divine circulation, the practical implementation of service consciousness requires understanding the profound difference between service that seeks recognition and service that operates in silence. Most acts of helping in our culture are performed with some level of announcement, explanation, or expectation of acknowledgement, but there's a form of assistance that carries exponentially more spiritual power, weekly silent help, where you perform concrete acts of service without telling anyone, without explaining your motives, and without seeking any form of recognition or gratitude. The power of silent action surpasses noisy action because when you serve without needing external validation, your soul is affirming that it doesn't require human approval to feel valuable. You're demonstrating that your connection to divine source is sufficient, that your sense of worth comes from within rather than from outside recognition. This consciousness shift creates an entirely different energetic field around your service that attracts abundance in ways that calculated generosity never could. Behind the scenes of this practice, something remarkable happens to your relationship with giving and receiving. When you help without anyone knowing, you eliminate the ego's involvement in your service. There's no pride, no image management, no social positioning, just pure expression of love through helpful action. This creates what I call invisible income streams, where the universe responds to your silent service with opportunities, resources, and support that appear through seemingly unrelated channels. The transformation that happens when you commit to regular anonymous assistance extends far beyond the immediate recipients of your help, your own. Consciousness expands because you're exercising your capacity to love without condition. Your sense of abundance grows because you're actively participating in circulation rather than accumulation. Your trust in divine provision deepens because you witness how giving creates space for receiving in ways you never could have planned. This practice of silent service becomes even more powerful when combined with another essential element of prosperity consciousness: the systematic release of resentment and judgment through what I call the fire letter technique. Most people underestimate how much emotional baggage they're carrying and how significantly this internal weight blocks their ability to receive abundance. Every unresolved grievance, every retained judgment, every stored resentment creates energetic congestion that prevents the free flow of good in your life. The fire letter process begins with complete honesty about relationships that still carry emotional charge for you. You write a letter to someone you need to forgive, starting with the words, "I forgive you completely. I free you and free myself." Then you write everything you feel without censoring or editing. All the hurt, disappointment, anger, or confusion that you've been carrying. This isn't about sending the letter, it's about extracting the emotional poison from your system. The letter concludes with genuine surrender to divine intelligence, acknowledging that you're releasing this situation and trusting that love will handle what your human mind cannot resolve. Then you burn the letter, using fire as a symbol of transmutation. As you watch the paper transform into ash and smoke, you're participating in a powerful ritual of release that communicates to your subconscious mind that this burden is truly being eliminated. The impact of this practice on your prosperity consciousness is immediate and profound. Every person you forgive creates space in your emotional and energetic field for more abundance to enter. Every grievance you release frees up mental and emotional energy that can be redirected toward creative and productive purposes. Every act of emotional clearing increases your capacity to receive and maintain higher levels of blessing. What's fascinating is how this principle applies to your relationship with money itself. Many people carry resentment toward wealthy individuals, judgment about their own past financial mistakes, or anger about economic systems. These attitudes create energetic resistance to abundance that sabotages even the most sophisticated prosperity strategies. Now the question becomes, how do you integrate these practices of service and forgiveness into a comprehensive approach to visioning and manifestation that aligns your personal desires with divine will while maintaining the humility necessary for sustained spiritual growth? Right, silent service multiplies. If you're ready to serve without recognition and release without condition, the integration of service and forgiveness creates the perfect foundation for understanding visioning with humility, which represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of prosperity consciousness. Most people approach goal setting and visualization from ego-driven ambition, trying to impress others, compensate for feelings of inadequacy, or prove their worth through external achievements. But true vision operates from an entirely different source, soul-aligned communion with divine intelligence. When you create visions from humility, you're not trying to manipulate the universe to give you what your personality wants. Instead, you're opening yourself to receive and express what your soul came here to manifest. This requires developing the discernment to distinguish between desires that serve your authentic spiritual evolution and desires that merely serve your conditioned ego patterns. The transformation happens when you learn to create clear, precise images of what you want to experience while simultaneously releasing attachment to the specific form that manifestation might take. You hold the essence of your vision, the feelings, qualities, and experiences you desire, while trusting divine intelligence to orchestrate the details in ways that serve your highest good and the greater benefit of all concerned. Behind the scenes of this practice, you're developing what I call collaborative creation. Instead of trying to force outcomes through willpower alone, you're partnering with universal intelligence to bring forth possibilities that exceed what your limited perspective could have conceived. This approach eliminates the struggle and desperation that characterize most manifestation attempts while producing results that feel both satisfying and spiritually aligned. The key is learning to vision from a state of internal completeness rather than external neediness. When you can genuinely feel grateful for your life as it currently exists, while simultaneously holding clear intention for expansion and growth, you create the perfect conditions for harmonious manifestation. You're not desperately trying to escape your present circumstances. You're lovingly inviting greater expression of divine potential. This consciousness of humble visioning naturally leads to understanding the importance of establishing consistent daily practices that maintain your alignment with prosperity consciousness, regardless of external circumstances. The ritual I'm about to describe isn't just a nice spiritual practice. It's a systematic approach to programming your consciousness for abundance that works whether you're currently struggling financially or already experiencing material success. The morning portion begins with 3 minutes of silence to center your awareness and disconnect from the mental chatter that typically dominates the beginning of each day. This is followed by a metaphysical reading of Psalm 23, where you interpret each verse as a statement of current spiritual reality rather than future hope. You then engage in 3 minutes of interior visualization, seeing yourself moving through your day with confidence, purpose, and divine guidance rather than visualizing specific outcomes or possessions. Your morning practice concludes with a gratitude inventory where you identify specific aspects of your current life that deserve appreciation, followed by a daily affirmation that establishes your consciousness in truth rather than circumstance. This entire sequence takes less than 15 minutes, but creates a foundation that influences every decision and interaction throughout your day. The evening practice serves as a completion and clearing process. You review your day for additional reasons for gratitude, engage in a mental fire letter process to release any resentments or judgments that accumulated during the day, apply the golden key technique to any situations that require divine intervention, and conclude with a blessing that acknowledges divine presence and protection. The impact of maintaining this dual practice creates what I call prosperity momentum, a sustained state of consciousness that naturally attracts abundance while maintaining inner peace, regardless of external fluctuations. You stop being reactive to circumstances and start being creative from principle. The fact that you're still here, that you've stayed with me through this entire exploration of prosperity consciousness, tells me something significant about who you are and what you're truly seeking. You're not looking for quick fixes or surface-level strategies. You understand that real transformation happens from the inside out, and you're willing to do the deeper work that most people avoid. If this message has resonated with you, if you can feel the truth in these principles, even if you haven't fully implemented them yet, then you're exactly the kind of person I create content for. This channel exists for those who are ready to approach abundance from a spiritual foundation, who want to build wealth that aligns with their values, and who understand that lasting prosperity comes from consciousness rather than circumstances. I'd love to have you as part of this community of conscious creators and spiritual entrepreneurs. When you subscribe, you're not just getting more videos. You're joining a conversation about what it means to live abundantly while staying connected to your highest purpose. Every week, I share insights, techniques, and revelations that can help you bridge the gap between spiritual understanding and practical results. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below saying, "This message was meant for me." I read every single comment, and I want to acknowledge the dedication it takes to absorb this kind of transformational content completely. Your engagement helps more people discover these teachings, and there's something beautiful about that ripple effect of consciousness, expanding through genuine connection. And if you felt that spark of recognition, that sense of, yes, this is what I've been looking for, show me with a like. It's a simple gesture, but it tells me that we're aligned, that this content is serving its purpose of elevating consciousness and expanding possibilities. There's a video right here that complements this topic perfectly. It goes deeper into the practical applications of these principles and shares specific techniques you can start using immediately. Click and continue with me over there, because this is just the beginning of what's possible when you align your prosperity with your purpose.